Australia has an interesting history, from first being called New Holland to then being home to lots of criminals who were sent there as punishment. It might have been a scary place to go back then, but things have certainly changed. Let's look at some interesting facts about Australia. The first people to live in Australia were the Aborigines, and they've been there for approximately 60,000 years. That is a seriously long time. If you're 10, it seems like you've been around for ages, surely. Now multiply that by 6,000, and that's how long the Aborigines have been there. Wow. Next came the Torres Strait Islanders, who've been there for about 10,000 years. Did you know that Australia was first called New Holland? Well, that was because Dutch explorers landed on the fine Aussie shores in 1606. So therefore, New Holland became its name, as this was now their second home. Then, the British arrived in 1788 and set up the first ever colony. Amazingly, the British sent criminals to Australia as punishment many, many years ago, and this little bit of history still lives with Australia today. The name Australia was given to the country in 1824. It comes from the word Terra Australis Incognita. That just means unknown southern island. In 1851, coal miners unearthed a very precious metal. Can you guess what it is? It would make you very rich. Well, it was gold. Kalgoorlie is a really small, remote town in Western Australia, and just that little town alone is one of the world's largest producers of gold. Now that's amazing. Australia is a land with a truly fascinating geography. If you find this subject boring, trust me, you won't anymore. Listen in for some supercharged facts about the deserts, rivers, and forests of this huge country, and lots more besides. Australia is the only country in the world that covers an entire continent, but amazingly, it's also an island continent. Fancy that! Certainly the largest island in the world. It is rather large, at 4,779,602 square miles, or about 7,692,024 kilometers squared. If you had to fly from Perth to Brisbane, it would take about 5 hours. That makes it 22 times bigger than the United Kingdom. Wow. More than 22 million people live in Australia, which actually isn't that many when you consider its size. More than 2/3 of the country is desert, called the outback. There must be a serious amount of sand there. Even though there's heaps and heaps of desert, there's an abundance of rainforests here too. You know, I bet you were thinking Australia is just a hot country. Well, it's not. It's a land of extreme opposites. The highest temperature ever reached was 103 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 50.7 degrees Celsius, and the lowest temperature was -73 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's something interesting. The country's coastline is 22,292 miles long, or about 35,877 kilometers, and they have over 10,000 beaches. Their coastlines span 3 oceans, which covers about 7,456,454 square miles, or about 12 million kilometers squared. That's just humongous. 91% of Australia is covered in vegetation. That's 7 million square kilometers. It might be easier to get rocket launchers on your feet instead of walking. The Great Dividing Range is a 2,300 mile, or 3,700 kilometers, long stretch of mountains and sends water to the most important rivers and the Great Artesian Basin. This is the largest groundwater source in the world. Canberra was chosen as the capital, and that's because Sydney and Melbourne couldn't stop arguing about which one should be the capital. See, it doesn't pay to argue. The highest mountain in Australia is Mount Kosciuszko, which is 7,310 feet high, or about 2,228 meters. The average 8-year-old is about 5 foot tall, so it would take about 1,500 kids standing on each other's shoulders to be as tall as that mountain. Best you start making lots of friends to help you. Uluru is the largest lone standing rock in the world. It pops out of the desert like a massive big red rock. It's very massive. Western Australia is a state of Australia, and it is 1,643,908 square miles, or about 2,645,615 kilometers squared. Just to give you an idea of how big that is, England would fit into the state over 20 times, Germany over 7 times, and France around 4 times. That's just one state. Now, best you sit down for this fact. It snows in Australia. Yes, it really does. In winter, they can get more snow than Switzerland.